Hello everybody, I'm Baldur. I'm coming from an Estonian cybersecurity company, Cybernetica. And the role that I will be having here in this specific room is connecting people. So I'll be talking about problems. And I'll try to figure out who you are, why are you here, and maybe offer you an opportunity to take home some either problems or some solutions. So please raise a hand or who is from industry. Keep it up. So others, please take a look around. Well, I would say that 50% of the audience here is actually industry. Thank you, Nigel. So please raise your hand who is academia. Okay, see you guys. These are the guys with who you develop stuff. They do the basic research. So please raise your hand who offer technical solutions. Okay. Whoa, lots of. Very good mix. And that's why I will be concentrating on use cases and problems. But in order for you to understand from where I'm coming from, I need to do a couple of quick slides about Cybernetica so you understand why so academic approach and why sort of not concentrating as a startup but behaving a bit differently and developing a platform. So yeah. That's it. You can read. I want to start reading the slides. Today, just Avi was telling that Unbound did not go for Europe with Unbound solution because of all sorts of different issues and certifications. Well, Cybernetic actually went to Threshold Crypto together with a partner. This smart idea. This is now ADAS compatible authentication solution because, the research problem was that Apple is losing SIMs in the mobile phones, so how to keep the keys. The research problem got solved by virtualizing the keys that Avi was talking about a lot in the morning, so I won't, in the first half, so I won't be repeating that. Threshold Crypto, NIST is currently standardizing it, standard stuff, certified in Europe, so on both sides of the ocean, actually the same principles, mathematical principles, are currently used for securing keys. Industry, you should know that. This is something valid. In the first year in the Baltics, when the technology was deployed, 1 million users. Well, Baltics are small countries, we don't have too many people, but 1 million is still 1 million. Imagine what it would give in Germany or France or UK if a proper authentication technology that people love and actually use every day would be deployed. So, yeah, I'm from the Sherman team. These products I actually do name because they are important from European point of view also. UXP is country level, massively scaled secure governmental data exchange platform. It's used in Estonia, Finland, Ukraine, Namibia, Haiti, and lots of different countries are currently in the process of deploying it. Greenland and something going on in Japan, something going on in the US. Yes, we are the only company who does secure internet, verifiable internet voting in Estonia. Well, I think we'll end up talking about that after a couple of glasses of wine, like it always happens in conferences where cryptographers are present. I'm not a cryptographer. I'm an applied mathematician and then MBA from Baldur School of Management, USA on top of that. And, okay, let's go forward. I'm coming from the Department of Privacy Technologies. We are actually trying to help organizations to understand what are their problems and how privacy-enhancing technologies can help them. So these are a couple of things that we have done. I will stop talking about implemented stuff and history and go into problems very fast. And yes, Alexander, Jakob, where are you? Jakob disappeared. Ah, here, there you are. At this point, I would really like to thank you, Alexandria Institute and Partizia, for participating with us in actual deployment, real-life deployment, real people, 300 people from a local government who had been previously sort of being abused in industry. For instance, in banks, they had the managers get data out of the service systems when they were being honest about problems in the company. So people were really afraid to express their honest opinion, and the economic crisis didn't help also. The year was 2016, and only then the similar level of payment that was pre-economic crisis was achieved in the public sector of Estonia. So you understand, 8 years of very sort of restricted payment in the governmental sector, people were unhappy. So secure multi-party computation actually helped people to be honest, and the mayor of the Tartu city government thanked everybody that had helped them in sort of getting truth out of the employees so that the city government could improve. Nigel talked about this project, this one. This actually we were named for we were the runner-up or the first princess for the European Casper Boden Award. Okay, he's in his computer not watching. I thank you to also, I think your little fingers were somewhere behind this. We've got a privacy award from, what was the name of that? Yeah. A couple of years back also. With this slide, this is like the result of the Gartner conference. When you can take the Gartner conference in two ways. You can look at it as creating hype. This year they were touting, blockchain, AI, but somehow privacy has bubbled up on the top 10 priorities for 2019. And when I looked at this, it's a Dutch guy, an analyst from Netherlands. When he was sort of presenting the importance of privacy to industry and the level of maturity of industry currently, then absolutely somehow that helped me to have this clarity, because we were having a bunch of different offerings, but they are not meaningful for an organization who is actually only concerned with proving something like whitewashing what we do not change anything, let's sort of show that we are compliant. So no pets will interest them. But if companies will actually want to analyze what they are leaking, or maybe even reduce the leakage, or understand the attack vector landscape that they are having, then all these privacy-enhancing services will help companies in understanding. And yes, the deployment of pets is orthogonal, meaning that it can be done in any maturity level if there's some sort of internal need or realization that actually the pet will make life easier for the organization. For me, this sort of hierarchy based on the Gartner's maturity model, this helped to understand why we are talking about these things that we are talking about, or these companies. For instance, IQVIA is clearly wanting differentiation. They want to be the first. They are developing a unique product for pharmaceuticals. So everything here is basically already taken care of. Okay, coming to the gist and point of the presentation. So I was flying in the plane and thinking, what should I do here to help everybody, industry, developers of solutions, and academia, who is kind of working together with both to get the best of today, take home problems that they actually are able to solve with their own products, and maybe take home a couple of ideas from here and technologies, because we have been talking about two major technologies. Okay, FHA, Pascal will be talking. So it is secure multi-party computation and fully homomorphic encryption. These are the techniques and tools that you will take home from here today. But where do you apply it? Where's the nail? So that's what I will try to concentrate on. So what's the problem why we are talking about privacy preserving technologies is that actually everything that was developed before was not designed to be private. It was designed to be efficient. Yes, it was designed to have data, and privacy was not the design principle at all. And well, as everybody knows, privacy is something that you cannot patch onto a system. It has to be designed into systems. So let's go for a couple of problems that are, well, in Estonia it got solved, in Europe it's still outstanding. So the VAT, value-added tax gap, was quite an issue for Estonia. So they wanted to build a system that would gather all invoices over 1,000 euros and do risk analysis in the tax and customs board. But they didn't have the data. So they wanted to get that data from enterprises, but as this is highly sensitive data, I mean, if we do business together and every transaction is going to the tax and customs board, what kind of power it gives to these employees who get access to that data. And well, later it came out that there were, for instance, several employees in the tax and customs board who were doing private consulting. So that was one of the reasons why the president initially vetoed that you need to be absolutely secure that this data is not being used in a wrong way, only to reduce the tax problem. And okay, in this case, the end solution that was selected was not MPC, but it was with traditional techniques. But this year, when I was presenting to the directors generals of European statistical offices about big data, securing big data, and Estonian statistical office director came to me, Baldur, you are kind of incorrect. I didn't want to break your presentation, but we actually managed to get that data out of the tax and customs board. are statistical offices capable of having internal trading risk assessments? Because knowing that you are having this volume of trade with that company, this is like a precursor to your stock price. Are the processes in place that actually manage this risk in statistical offices? Are the statistical offices ready for that data? I would argue for not. So, yeah, that's the way that MPC would protect the honest taxpayer and also not allow data to be sort of moved to someone else. And also, it would not reveal who is doing how much business with who, but it would just be spitting out the suspects. Another case also in this direction is welfare fraud. In some countries there are no personal IDs, and well, in these countries sometimes people even don't know if people vote twice. Welfare fraud is rather sort of spread, and the case that people gather welfare from different regions, it's also spread. So this guy comes to this wonderful idea that, okay, I am sleeping in a park, let's go ask for welfare housing. And yes, he goes to 2 different counties because the counties do not exchange information between themselves. He gets the welfare support from both counties. In one city he lives, and in the other he basically rents the apartment to somebody who is in a more poor situation than he. So what should we do? A total surveillance state? That is very, very ineffective and, well, costly. Instead, we could maybe combine confidential or private data from different governmental data sources, and while protecting the honest majority, like, well, think about the sniffer dog, the doggy who is searching for narcotics in an airplane, or also an airport. The doggy is actually a pet, privacy-enhancing technology. The doggy is not opening everybody's luggage. The doggy is sort of standing in front of those luggages that smell like heroin or something. So MPC is kind of like that, protecting the honest majority, but revealing the identities of the subject. This was this 2015 study. Well, universities are leaking. They are leaking non-graduates. Imagine a factory whose from the total input that the factory is taking in, only 60% is being delivered as output, and 40% of the input is going to waste. Do you think the CEO of that factory would work there in the next year? I don't think so. In universities, it is pretty common. When I was doing basic sort of relevance research, how wide that is spread, it is not only IT, it is actually engineering also, and this is a common problem in all Europe. And on the other side, we are complaining that we do not have graduates from IT enough, we don't have graduates for technical subjects, but what we are doing. So there are different regulations that hinder combining, because the data is actually there, the governments have that data, but it cannot be combined to solve the problem. Next sort of problem or question. Everybody nearly has this most widespread sensor. When we are talking about IoT, then the first sensor or the gathering of sensors you should remind yourself is the one that is in your pocket. Everything else is much less spread. And from that sensor, the trail that it leaves in moving in space and time, a lot of useful stuff can be also deduced. But how to do it in a European way, honoring the underlying principle of privacy that is important in European countries. So, coming to unsolved problems, this Heilige Staffel, this room where we are sitting, is actually very historically significant. I'm very grateful for Nigel to gathering us here. So basically Nigel is doing what the church was doing in Middle Ages. The Heilige Staffel was actually the institution that was spreading, sort of alleviating poverty, buying stuff produced from farmers and offering that as a service to the poor. So somehow, somewhere, we probably here are information poor. So Nigel, as the church, brought together the different producers and the different companies in need and helped to redistribute value and wealth in the society. Thank you. And I discovered that in the morning when I started reading about the history and the meaning and importance of this institution in the sort of economic development of agriculture in Belgium and Netherlands. So you're actually here making crypto history today. And these are some of these quite wicked and large problems. If you think that a global bank knows who their customers are, when, for instance, there are countries like Indonesia or Russia where you cannot move data out of the country, then no, actually they don't know if John Doe, who enters the bank in one country, is the same as whom they are already having a relationship in another country. And if they, for instance, discover that John Doe was doing some, well, supporting terrorism or was active in financial fraud, and they want to kick John Doe out of the bank, then which John Doe? It's a huge unsolved problem. Well, starting as Nigel with the banks. We talked about this employee engagement. This is a question of every organization. How do I actually cater to the needs of my employees so that they really are on at least like level 8 of enthusiasm and contribute what they really can, that they just do not sort of reside on the company premises. All sorts of these comparison things, benchmarking that Jacob also mentioned. Industrial benchmarking was the first case with what Cybernetica deployed MPC over public internet in 2011. And then there's a huge problem in the US. US is the top incarcerator of people and also the top incarcerator putting women into prison. That actually develops a societal problem. Women are not at home, children are not being raised properly, children are given to foster homes, and it's sort of repeating. So one of our first value-added resellers in the US is trying to solve that problem with MPC. This one I talked about. This is that Galois, Nigel knows Galois. They wrote about it in our blog that there's like 20% of women in US campuses have sort of been in contact with sexual, not only harassment but assault, and only something like 10% of it gets reported, and 1% of the assaulters get convicted. So they are currently developing a solution in the States, but somehow I don't think that men are men and women are women, and the sexual assault is only the privilege of the US campuses. I think that's something maybe to look into also in Europe. Jakob told about this better credit for companies and individuals. When you think about two recent legislations, GDPR and PSD2, that have been implemented in Europe, then you understand that the playfield is there, just the solution need to come to that playfield, and well, basically all the puzzle pieces are there, and somebody just needs to start building apps. When we look at the fraud, we were talking about that solution in Estonia. In the first quarter, Estonia got 70 million additional VAT when they implemented the system. Imagine, I mean, how many hospitals and schools can this 150 billion in Europe build? The grey economy, how to measure that? In Estonia, an association of forest and wooden industry came to us because they were saying that the state actually has this data about different payments and taxes and who buys forest, but this is somehow not fed back to the industry. So I said, okay, we are happy to do your solution, but they said, no. Coming from a socialist background, people somehow expect stuff to be free when it's coming to the state. Okay, time of maturity. So go a couple of years, and suddenly one of these enterprises gets sort of enterprise award something. And everybody in the industry knows that they are paying sort of illegal salaries, that they're not paying taxes. Then this kettle absolutely blew, and then they started doing something about it. So, some of these regulatory precedents that will help you in solving the problems that we have gone through together with Partisia already in FP7 project practice, where we were working together for 3 years, together with University of Göttingen and legal team. So the legal and ethical side is very important in deploying these technologies, because if you really go to tackle the big problems, then there are multiple sides to these problems. You need to think them through, what is not only legal but what is ethical. And as we have the technology to sort of limit or allow what gets output, so this privacy enhancing technologies and encrypted computing is exactly the technology that would help in implementing the law in code, not 100 pages of contracts. And yeah, I'm basically through. And yeah, that's what I firmly believe, that when enterprises start tackling current problems with privacy enhancing technologies, that their level of maturity in processes, in management, and also in the end of employee engagement will improve.
Are there any questions? Yeah, quick one.
Can you comment a bit on, you mentioned the DPAs that the DPA in Estonia, they acknowledge. Is that like commonly agreed among DPAs that this technology is?
No. Because there are cultural differences in interpreting the law. There are cultural differences in interpreting privacy despite common legal ground. For instance, when I was on the conference of ISTAT, it's the statistics organization of Italy, they started implementing GDPR from actual privacy impact assessments. It was an engineer. They took an engineering approach to implementing compliance in the new legal environment. So this is not common in other countries. That was really exceptional. I was totally in awe that somebody had taken that kind of approach to the legal question. In Estonia, we are in a kind of different situation because of two things. We have our own independent country only from 1991, meaning that before that there were other governments and other people who were making the decisions. Now we have the possibility to first time select who we want to make decisions. So there's an elevated level of trust until now. That's why all this e-government stuff has been also moving very fast. The other thing is that Estonian organizations, both companies and governmental organizations, are extremely fast decision makers compared to, I would say, nearly whatever other European countries. It's very similar to the US. That's why the stuff moves very fast in Estonia. And that's why these legal assessments happened in Estonia, and currently we are only thinking with Eurostat in going to the European DPA, the Data Protection Inspectorate, with some multi-country case, and doing legal assessments for DPAs of different countries. So sort of getting the SNIL or Italian, can't say the Italian name of the DPA, because yes, the DPAs are having different approaches to privacy and privacy enhancing technologies, and this is not black-white. There are two legal schools. One is saying that if there exists a key in the world and somebody has access to that key, the encrypted information is private information. That's the absolute school. Then there's the other school, that is relativistic school, that say that if you, in your function, do not have any means to decrypt that information, then it's not PII for you. It can be a person, it can be an organization. So until these two schools have not been colluded, fighting in court, we don't know what will prevail in Europe.
Isn't it the case that GDPR considers encrypted data as an erasure of this data, assuming you don't have access to the decryption key? So if it's the case, it solves the issue, and you can work on encrypted data, for instance.
I would advise you to read the article that Professor Spindler wrote in Project Practice, because their legal team covered both regular crypto and then secret sharing and secure multi-party computation.
Okay. People perceive that there's a difference between the two.
Yes,
Yeah.
from legal perspective there is a difference.
Yeah.
And when you talk with Japan, for instance, PII in any form is still PII. That's basically the absolute approach. That's why it doesn't give you competitive advantage to process PII with MPC in Japan because of the stance that the country has taken. But it does protect your secrets.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.